Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. And today, I'm very, very excited to introduce our guest, Isaac Munoz. He is currently serving as the Associate Vice President of Marketing, Strategy, and Insights at Texas A&M College Station. Welcome to the podcast, Isaac.
Thank you for having me, Shiro. Excited to be having this conversation today.
Great. And I do love to ask all of my guests this icebreaker. What do you love about higher ed?
What I love the most about higher ed is there is so much research happening in one campus, right? And I don't just say our main campus. We have a campus we have a dentistry in Dallas. We have Fort Worth Law School in Fort Worth. And so there's a lot going on and there's a lot of research happening. A lot of students are learning new things and a lot of professors are advancing research on something that they never thought of before, right? And so we're all solving, in quotes, the world or trying to make the world a better place. And I love that. There's that energy that it's only, that you can only feel in higher ed. So that's what I love about higher ed.
Love that. And, this is a great transition into my next question is you have a little bit of an interesting, come up to where you are today in terms of your position. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and how you got there?
Absolutely. So like I said, I've worked in higher ed in my current position for 2 years. And before that, I worked in higher ed usually as a clinical professor or adjunct professor. But I used to do that as a side, like on the side. I've always been interested in higher ed, as I was mentioning in your previous question. But before I joined higher ed, I actually started in advertising many, many years ago. And my job was in research, right? I was pretty much an account planner by default. Account planner, for some people, it's also known as strategic planner. A strategic planner takes into consideration the brand, the customer, and the marketplace. And you're able to understand kind of what's the insight between those three pillars or those three molecules, how they come together. So from there, I finished my doctorate education at the University of Texas at Austin. And then I moved to Southwest Airlines. And I was at Southwest Airlines for about 8 years or so. And there I was a senior business consultant in customer insights. And so again, think about a strategic planner. That was my job was to oversee kind of advertising, brand development, execution of the brand. Go to Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, we are the customer insights team was the internal consultants. And so we would be doing a lot of research for advertising, international expansion, community engagement, brands, athletics. Anyway, so we would be doing all that. And we would be the internal consultants for Southwest Airlines. After that, I went to AT&T and I worked at AT&T for about 2.5 years or something like that. And in there, I was the head of customer engagement. So I was taking into consideration everything that goes into the OTT product. OTT is over the top. So think about Netflix and Hulu combined, but for Latin America. So that was the product that we had. It was DirecTV Go for Latin America. It was quite fun. And so I was in charge of the curation of the product, the content, customer engagement, the customer care. And my charge was from Mexico all the way to Brazil. And that was quite a bit of fun. So then you're asking yourself, so how did you end up in higher ed?
Right.
And so I had been in conversations with Texas A&M University for a couple of years here and there. They said, hey, we're actually going to be looking for an associate vice president of strategy and insights or strategy and analytics. And I said, that sounds interesting. Let me know when you have the position. And so we started the conversation. AT&T said that they were going to be selling that part of the business. So they said, are you interested in staying with AT&T or trying something new or moving to Latin America? This was all during COVID. And so as excited as I was to move to Latin America and to move to Brazil, we were not ready to do that, just given the situation with COVID. And in case of transparency with your listeners and your viewers, I had a 1-year-old. So I was like, well, we're not going to be leaving, to
Right.
Latin America, to South America, in the midst of all this. And so I talked to Texas A&M University. I liked the challenge. I like what they were trying to build. I like that they were being innovative in bringing in somebody to oversee strategy and analytics. And so I took the job. And just to fast forward 2 years to where we are today, you said it. My job is different than when I started. My job right now is in charge of marketing, strategy, and insights. It's different than the job that I started when I started 2 years ago. My job right now is pretty much to oversee the marketing part of the university. So we are marketing and communications, and I get to oversee the marketing side, which is it's quite fun, to be completely honest. That was a long explanation, but a little bit of the background as to how I ended up here.
It's amazing. And can you tell us a little bit of your main goals right now and kind of the dynamic of the departments? I know there's several assistant, I think there's several assistant vice presidents who have different roles within a bigger umbrella that
Yes.
I think you described in our previous call.
We are four associate vice presidents, and we serve under one senior associate vice president, who then serves under our senior vice president or our chief external affairs officer. And the way we're structured, we have one associate vice president that is in charge of what we call schools, colleges, and outside divisions, et cetera, right, campuses. And his charge is to be kind of the liaison between the school and us, right? Marketing and communications, or Marcom, as I will be referring to from
Gotcha.
here on. Then we have another associate vice president that's in charge of executive communications. And her charge is pretty much to be, for a lack of a better explanation, the voice of the president and the other C-level people, right? Like the chief commercial officer, my boss, which is the chief external affairs officer, obviously our
Uh-huh.
president. And so we have that second as a vice president. Then we have the next one, and she is our associate vice president of media, right? And so crisis management. And so she's very knowledgeable in that
Mm,
space because she comes from that background of making sure that you can manage and understand what's going on within culture, and making sure that you can understand how to better assess bad news or great news. And so she has that. She is the liaison between newspapers and media. I mean, that's hence her title. And then it's me, and I'm the person in charge of marketing. And so within marketing, right, and then I get to see anything from, let's say, the website to, you said it a little bit earlier, insights and analytics. Then you also have, right, project management. We have our advertising, our media, our creative, graphic designs, etc. So everything that has to do with marketing, I get the privilege to oversee. So that's kind of how we're structured. Based on how we're structured, we are going through centralization. Centralization in the private sector is not uncommon because you have one marketing department. You may have different offices, but you have one marketing department and everything fits through the
right.
marketing department. In higher ed, it's not like that, right? There's a lot of what I would refer to as small nonprofits in each of the schools, right? So the school of the business school in this case, Mace School of Business, they used to have a small marketing team, and I say small, let's say 3 to 5 people, right? They would have a director of marketing, a marketing manager, somebody in video, somebody for social. Sometimes it could be the same person, and so multiply that times 18 schools, right? And then that goes very quickly. Like choo, 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 choo,
Right.
you have a lot of teams. So through that centralization, we are now organizing where we have the university marketing team, right? So my team, our Marcom team, gets to then separate based on functions. And so we can then we have better position but we're able to leverage better for negotiation purposes, for investment purposes, for marketing, for messaging. You create a sort of uniformity. You asked about KPIs, or what are some of the goals. So through centralization, that is one of the big goals, right? Making sure that we as a team can deliver what's best for the university and the school by having one team and having different expertise within one team. Centralization takes a while, and President Bank started that at the end of 2021. It's still going, and it's going strong. We in marketing are doing it in phases. So we're in
Hmm.
currently phase 3, and we're doing quite well for phase 3. We have now centralized web. We've centralized We're centralizing project management. We're centralizing graphic designers. And why do I say all this? I say all this because we're spending enough time setting up our work so that it can have a nice workflow from the school through our associate vice
Right.
president, who is in charge of schools. His name is Blake. That comes through Blake. Blake comes to us, right, to my team and to marketing, and then we can have a cohesive strategy. One of our goals is to have that, a cohesive strategy that we can then deliver from the university brand all the way to the schools in the way they want to execute. So that's one, I don't want to say qualitative goal because it's not, we're measuring against that, but that's one of our biggest goals under centralization. Now, some goals that I specifically look for with my team, with the marketing team, is trust and when it comes to the brand.
Hmm.
So trust is one of in the private sector, and sorry to compare it to that, but I think it's a good liaison. It's a good comparison between
I
the
appreciate it
two.
a lot. Yeah, no, it
Just
helps me understand. Yeah.
yes. So in the private sector, let's take a KPI that it's incredibly important. Um, NPS, Net Promoter Score, right? But a Net Promoter Score, we also measure it in higher ed. But Net Promoter Score in the private sector is incredibly important. It may have shifted to other metrics, but that's still kind of a key metric in the private sector.
Hmm.
They use that NPS because it's a measurement of a relationship, right? Did you come to the store? Did you have a good experience? Did you not? Will you come back? Right? It kind of helps with loyalty. In higher ed, that's not necessary. It is important, but your relationship with the university is more than transactional, right? You can have a
Right.
more than transactional relationship in the private sector, sure, right? Let's think of Apple or Southwest Airlines, where you have to use the product multiple times. AT&T, so sure,
Right.
that's important, right? But that evaluating the experience every time you do something or engage with the brand. With ours, we are talking to prospective students, right? And
Hmm.
we're asking them to spend at least 4 years of their life with our brand, getting their education. And then once they graduate, they become former students. And so then that sort of engagement lasts a lifetime. So while on the private sector, it's NPS, in higher ed, I believe it's trust. That trust of I believe that my university is doing the best that they can to educate me. I believe that my university is going to help me succeed. And I believe that the university is using funds for the betterment of, the world, if you will, right? I mean, so you can do something better. So that's one big goal that I have for the brand, trust. Now, it's not as simple as it sounds
Right.
because how do you measure trust, right? And so within trust, we have to make sure that we explain what trust does and what trust will do for the brand, for the school, for the programs that we're trying to go after. So with that, we're trying to make sure that we have the right brand metrics, the right brand measurement, making sure that we're establishing those KPIs and those benchmarks. Those things have not been set in the past. So one of my key roles and goals is making sure that we're setting up those things from the get-go, so
Right.
we can know if there was a positive shift or a negative shift, that we can then set a KPI of our trust has increased. Last thing I'll say, and then I can go to a second goal, but we don't struggle with awareness, right? The majority of people, according to our research, in fact, 3/4 in quotes of the population, or 76% of those people that were interviewed, are
Hmm.
aware of Texas A&M University. So
Right.
it goes up to 79%, right? So we don't struggle with awareness. We don't struggle with even people wanting to come here. We have enough people of that, but it's, do they trust that we are the right investment for their kids, for themselves?
Hmm.
Do they trust that we are using the right funds for the university to give back, right? And so that's why trust is an important metric that I want to make sure that our team, my team, is measuring moving forward.
And why is that an important measurement for the institution or business, however you want to look at it, right? Or for the
Yes.
flip side, not the customer side, which is the student and their family and parents.
It's incredible. I love that question. Thank you for asking. It's because we're a not for profit, right? And so, yeah, a lot of the money that we have, not a lot of the money that we have is coming from obviously the government. Um, it's coming from legislature, but it's also coming from donors, right? And so we need to be incredibly good stewards of the money that we are given. I'm not saying that the private sector is not, they obviously have to be good stewards, but the way it's measured, it's a little bit different than we are because the stock market plays a big role, right? And so there's a constant measuring within the customer. There's a customer at the end of the quarter of how they did. We are not there yet. I would like for us to get something closer to getting that sort of measurement on how our current customers, our former customers, not former customers, they're always our customers, but our former students
Right.
feel about what we're doing. And so it's our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're good, that we're being good stewards with that money, because I mean, it's taxable. We're not
Right.
for profit, right? And so we need
No,
to make sure that we operate as such.
that makes sense. And I know we're gonna go back a little bit further
Yeah.
even, but love this trust question and how you're trying to, bring something from outside, a little bit outside the industry, which, it probably isn't, mind-boggling, but it's a great metric. You're kind of going back to the centralization and the phases that you broke down. Can you go into a little more detail there about how you're breaking it down and what was like phase one and phase two like, and how are you able to measure that they've been successful so far?
It's a great question. I don't know if I can answer it.
It doesn't have to
Um,
be in detail, but just how
I
super
was
high
gonna say
level is good.
no, no, not even because of anything that is
Right.
proprietary. It's we're there's a saying of, it's gonna be a little bit weird, but people who are entrepreneurs, sometimes they jump off the plane and they're building the parachute as they go down or something like that.
Right.
Sounds a little bit of a morbid example, but the idea is we needed to go through centralization, and so we are going on a case by case basis of where we need to go. We know that we need to centralize the teams.
Hmm.
So we did a survey. We needed to make sure that how many people we have, right? How many people are doing what they're doing. We realized that there's a lot of duplication. There's a lot of duplication because what happens? You have a school. I don't know. I'm just picking a school. I'm actually not going to name a school. You have school A, right? School B, school C, right? They may all be having. They may all have the same positions, and so there's a lot of duplication, and so you're not maximizing the strength of what one team can do for all those three schools. So we had to do a survey, we had to do an analysis, we had to figure out those things. Once we figured out how many people we have, how many positions we had, what
Hmm.
gaps we had, any sort of benchmarking, then we worked on the phases. Phase one was pretty much doing that, the homework. Phase two was beginning to do the transition as to what teams are, in quotes, affected the most. In this case, web was one of them, right? Because web is not transitioning and it's not going to happen that fast. In fact, we had so many web teammates, right, across campus, that as we're trying to focus into one team, right, there's work that still needs to be done within those schools. So we knew that we needed to start with web, and that the web centralization was going to take years. So that was, for example, phase two. Phase two was the kickoff of web. Phase two for analytics, we didn't have an analytics team. Now, don't hear me wrong. It's not that we didn't do analyses. Of course we did. There's plenty of people who we have a lot of analysts. So it's not that we were doing analyses, it's that we didn't have, and you talked about data, and we'll talk about data in a second, but we didn't have a data set where people were saying, oh, that's a repository of data. That's where we go to evaluate. That's where we
Hmm.
extract the data that we get to analyze. None of that. That wasn't happening, right? So what's happening? So then we have to then, phase two was also the kicking off of in the explanation of what the analytics team was to do. Insights. That's an insight. We didn't have an insights team that did the primary research, that set up the benchmarking, that figured out where we needed to be going. And so again, that was phase two. So that thus far, I would say that it's proven successful in that we have centralized some of those things, right? Digital signage, again, it's probably going to go through phase three. Um,
Mm.
Photo video, right? We had a lot of photographers and videographers across campus. We're centralizing that, and we're going to be setting them up in hubs, right? So hubs are going to be working with different teams. But now phase three is, how do they work together with the teams? How do they get the process started where I need to take a picture, I need to take a video, or hey, I need to engage with the customer insights team because we need
Hmm.
to partner with X brand out there? Can you do the research on our behalf? How does that work? And so phase two was the kicking off of these teams. Phase three is making sure that these can get into practice, right? It's the applied side. So phase three is and I'll finish with this. Phase three is the continuation and the applied of these teams, but it's also the kickoff of the centralization of graphic designers. It's also the centralization of project management. It's the continued centralization of web. So it's kind of it goes, we did the analysis, phase two, for some will keep on going, for some stops at phase three, then becomes applied in phase three. And so that's kind of how it's going. It's going on well. It's going well. It's a long-term project. That's what it is. And thus far, people are nervous and people are excited as well. Nervous because it's a big change. Excited because they get to work with other graphic designers, will get to work with other graphic designers rather than be a team of one within a specific school. So it's little things like that that it's good, and it also takes a little bit of time.
Thank you. Thanks for explaining that, because I know centralization, very hot topic. A lot of schools are moving to the model, and I think one thing I've been shouted out on this podcast is, people like specific details. I personally like
Yeah.
them too. It gets me thinking about, like, how can I, recreate or redesign a specific model that someone has
Sure.
told me.
So let me jump in really quick. Something that I really like about higher ed, you asked this actually earlier. Something that I really like about higher ed is people are willing and wanting to work across the board. So we have contacted like friends at the University of Texas, at Arizona
Mhm.
State University, at University of Florida, like Vanderbilt. Like people are not shy of saying, "Hey, I think this school is doing it. Let's call them." And so there's that sense of it's not a competition. We're all wanting to do what's best, and so people are willing to share. In the private sector, sure, that happens here and there, but you are competing for that one customer, right? Because it's going to make a big difference. And
Right.
so there's a lot of that in higher ed. I haven't seen it. We've called different schools, and people are more than willing to help us, because some people have gone through centralization, not at our level because we're a
No.
very large
Yeah.
school, but they've gone through it. So we have for sure lessons learned there.
No, I completely agree. It's definitely sentiment I've heard many times with that same question, is that, open resources, open books, that community feeling. And community is also a great topic, because I know
Yes,
it's another one of your goals here, that you're
yes,
focusing on in your new position here
yes.
as well. Can
So
you tell us a little bit more about that?
absolutely. So we have there's multiple communities, right? There's the athletics community. They're very passionate, obviously, about our fans and about so our fans are very passionate about our school and how we're succeeding and doing well in football and in basketball and et cetera, et cetera. We have a second community that is in quotes our current students. How are they engaged? Where are they going on campus? Where are they eating? And what type of resources are they requiring for them to succeed? And then we have another community that is called our former students. And our former student, it's like I think 500,000 plus, right? And so that's a very also engaged community. And so from a marketing standpoint, how do we work with the different affiliates, right? Because we have different affiliates and associations that help with that. And so my job is to work with, for example, our VP of brand development, who used to be in marketing and now it's a part of finance. And he does an exceptional job at making sure that we are always engaging with the local community, right? Because that's actually a fourth area, a local community of,
Right.
we have local vendors, local partners, people that sell, our products. And so my job from a marketing standpoint is making sure that our brand showcases the core values of what we stand for and that is represented well, right? And so making sure that at the end of the day, it's giving a good light and shining a good light to the university. That's my job. It's not, I wouldn't think of it as a brand cop, but to some extent, it's a little bit of a brand cop. I need to make sure that if it's an advertising, a campaign, a billboard, anything that is that is representing well our different communities. But my job is also to partner with those people, like those associations, affiliates, that they're the ones reaching out to some, like we have an association that is reaching out to our former students, right? How can we help them, right? Making sure that they have what they need.
Hmm.
For our athletes, the same thing. I work with athletics very closely, and we meet on Tuesdays to kind of discuss. They share what they're doing, we share what we're doing. How can we work together? Because again, we're serving the university. We all work for one brand. So how do we work with them, with the local community, right? How do we give back, whether it's through serving or talking to a school, to high school students, to elementary, or maybe our medical school is helping with the local community as well. How do we do that? And then so anyway, so that's a big one. I think it's
Yeah.
in fact, sorry, in fact, it's so important that we have hired an executive director that is in charge of external affairs, and her job is making sure that we are servicing our and it's like serving our different communities as best we can, because we have a big brand, special, I mean, across the US, but especially in this area and for sure in Texas. So we need to make sure that we are top of mind, right? And not necessarily just focus on on awareness, but on favorability, familiarity, and trust, right? Those key metrics that I was talking about earlier, making sure that if we are present, right, in the local communities, that people will be like, huh, I'm not only aware, I am familiar, I have a favorable score, and I trust this university, right? And so then when they have to give more money, right, or money to the university, it's done in a way that it's a they're doing a good thing.
And how do you prioritize like what different communities you gave us a couple examples to
Yeah.
go for first? Do you look at those three measurements you just talked about, familiarity, favorability, and whatever's
Yes.
ranking lower, or do you look at like audience size? Like how do you tackle these, or is this more around the school's values and core values and where you're trying to get after?
It depends on the initiative. If I'm honest, it depends on the initiative. So, for
Hmm.
example, Texas is a big, it's of importance to us, right? I mean, like the state of Texas. So
Right.
we need to make sure that we prioritize our state in whatever initiatives we have going on. But if so when I say that, just by default, we're saying our focus is Texas, and then we need to focus on those like I said, we have a school in Fort Worth, right? We have the law school in Fort Worth. We have dentistry, Dallas. We have, medical school here. And so the way we're trying to make sure that we can serve as those communities, that we can reach out to those communities, and then the priority comes through what the school is trying to do within a certain area, and how can we support them from a university marketing into what they're doing, and then making sure that our external affairs team is involved. That's the way we prioritize outside of the president saying, "Hey, we have these four key priorities that we must deliver." And those priorities are very transparent. You can go to our website, and they're based on the path forward, and that's what Dr. Banks is trying to go after and saying, these are our priorities, this is what we're going after. And so then it's our job to execute on those. And so in the essence of transparency, those do need to, like, whatever the schools are doing, they do need to ladder up to those priorities. And so by default, those will get in quotes prioritized. And sorry for the redundancy there.
No, no, no worries. No, it helps me kind of understand, at least at Texas A&M, how you're approaching, how to re-engage with such a big population again because of how large the brand is and how big your alumni classes can be. So I was
Yes. And so
just
for
curious.
example, no, that's a good. So for think about for example, the School of Medicine, it's about to be 50 years old. How do we celebrate that, right? And so and that we have to do some community engagement there, because some of our focus is for sure the rural areas. Fort Worth, right? Fort Worth used to be a different school, a different law school, but now it's
Mhm.
about to celebrate its 10th anniversary. So So the conversation and the way we engage with the community is a little bit different there because it's 10 years versus 50 years. But we just celebrated 100 years of the 12th man, right? So now that's a tradition that was built on pretty much, um, one of our students saying that I'm ready to go in, right? And so how do you celebrate 100 years of, one tradition and what it stands for, right? So the 12th man, or, the university, 150 years old, I mean, about to be or something. So how do you, so those little things, they affect priorities because they affect the storytelling of what we're trying to go after. It's not that numbers, yes, numbers matter, but it's not that's the driver. It's how
Mhm.
is that going to be seen within the community, and how can we engage in the community to make sure that they feel they're a part of it, because one way or another, they've been a part of the university, because the university has been in existence for 100 years plus.
Gotcha. No,
Well,
thanks
for
for
sure.
explaining
Yeah.
that. Yeah, storytelling, big topic as well. I think, that along with personalization, brand, all kind of
Yeah.
tie really very close together. How are you kind of using all these insights, and then bringing practice in? I know we talked previous around data management principles. And so like you haven't, you're trying to create a better system around this, tying back to KPIs as well. But, how are you moving forward with using all this information, and then also merging that with data and best practice around data?
I wish I could tell you that we were rocking it, but we're not. So I just came from a conference last week, okay?
Uh-huh.
And the conference was on data. Like, it was for like data officers. Okay, I'm not a data officer, but I get to work with a lot of data. And one of my teams is analytics, and so therefore you get to work with data.
Hmm.
And one of the common threats that I saw across the board is, access, um, cleaning or maintenance, uh, the governance, and tools and duplication. And so listening to private sector companies explain those things and worry about those things made me feel better, because we are thinking about those things, right? We are not there where we can feel comfortable saying we have one data lake, and even though it's a mess, it's one data lake. We're not there yet, right? We have different sources of data. And so we have a team, they're not my team, they're part of a different team, and they're beginning to structure our data set, our data lake, our data warehouse, right? And they're beginning to see who they're going to partner with. So we're beginning to go that route. But like I said, governance, metadata, taxonomy, all those things will take some time. And so my team is working very closely with those teams to make sure that they can take into consideration other um, data sets that are for marketing purposes only, that may have not been thought about in the past, right?
Hmm.
Because in their mind, they may be thinking about just the student and the current student and what they do. And so that's a data set. We marketing bring in different data sets, what has been bought, who has been, what websites were visited, why were they visiting, perhaps prospective students or whatever, right? But we're doing that not for the purpose of selling. I go back to loyalty. I go back to trust, and I go back to communities and commitment. To me, those are the metrics that matter. And in order for me to be able to understand you, Shiro, better, for example, I need to understand, where you like to buy and why you like to buy, or why you go to your university, or you and I were chatting a little bit even before we started. You went skiing, and that's awesome, right? But so why do you like that? Right? It's not to say I'm going to sell you skis. I'm not interested in that, but it's the what makes you tick. And with the university, there's a lot of love and loyalty that goes with the university. And as much as I can understand those data sets, I will be able to serve you better. And so that's the goal I have. Now, are we there yet? No, but we are working very hard towards that. We're looking at different partners that can help us better understand the 360 approach of a person. And I mean, we have other different partners that are working on that. And so my team is working on making sure that we have marketing data and access to that data for segmentation purposes. Now, that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is just even the migration G4, right? We know that's happening. And so, like I said before, because we were decentralized, right? A lot of people, a lot of areas didn't have, for example, tech manager, right? So it's something not simple, but something small that
Hmm.
didn't show uniformity. So now my team, within my team, it's his name is Patrick, for example. Patrick's in charge of analytics, and um, Patrick is working with different teams and different schools to making sure, like, hey, we're
Mm.
setting up tech manager. We need to access this, and he's going to help you in this way. So we're doing we're not being innovative. We are migrating people to the next step, explaining why that matters, but then also showing how by us doing this, they'll be able to have access to a certain kind of data. This is a really long answer to your perhaps maybe simple question, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context that data, as sexy as it is really hard to manage, especially when it's decentralized. So through the process of centralization, we're beginning to do this and then migrate and then show the importance and hopefully continue to set KPIs, which we are setting now. So that's exciting, but our KPIs are just kind of a little bit of let's write it in whiteboard and then kind of erase it and go as soon as we have more data. So
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I like how you kind of tied it together with our earlier talking points. And I mean, we currently are going through J4 migration as well. And yes, it's a lot of work understanding a completely different user interface, but it's also been a good opportunity to kind of, dig deep into the websites. And, we only have two
yes,
websites that I'm managing. So I can't imagine with
yes,
hundreds, which I assume Patrick is working on,
yes,
what kind of opportunities that could also create,
yes.
just with going through that process. And it's probably good timing for you right now because you're creating all these principles and KPIs right now. That's great.
Now, if you want to be scared, it's actually like if we stopped and we were at over 1,700.
1,700 websites. Wow.
Well, websites and web pages, and so yeah, it's fun.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you. Switching gears just, slightly a little bit here is I know you've had a lot of leadership and management experience, what's something new that you're bringing to the table that's helped kind of influence this change? I know you have a large team, and so, what's helped kind of influence this kind of change, and I think it'd be helpful for our audience.
So I don't like to micromanage. I don't like I don't believe in micromanagement in the sense that I believe we should trust our people. I think if you're a professional and you're in this environment, micromanaging just takes more time and it doesn't give people, it shows people that you don't trust. Now, some people are micromanagers and they like that. That's okay. That's just not my stuff. You ask about me and myself is
Hmm.
not micromanaging because we're trying to do a lot of change. We're trying to make a lot of change happen in a very, I mean, quick for higher ed. It's not as quick on the private sector. I mean, this it wouldn't be considered quick on the private sector, but it is quick for higher ed.
Right.
So we're trying to enable change. Micromanagement is not one of the pillars that I believe in. I think we should perhaps trust people. Okay. Now that said, trust is something that needs to come also from my boss and my boss's boss, and I think that's where I feel very confident in that. I do feel like what the transparency in information, the transparency in the plan, and then pretty much it enables me to make sure that I can give as much information with my team so that we can
Hmm.
all be walking together, advancing together. Now, um, one of the things that I learned from the pandemic is my team was all in. I had a team in South America. So I had a team in Brazil, I had a team in Chile, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, and the USA. So I had different teams in all of those countries, and they needed to work together, okay, for different initiatives because our product was sold all the way from Mexico to Brazil. So we had about 8 countries that we were working with, and our product was launching. And so one of the things that I learned from the pandemic that I'm trying to bring in here is technology. We need to use technology to communicate, but it's a double-edged sword because that means that you should have the flexibility, should give people the flexibility to work whenever they work best, right? Some people work best at night, some people work best in the morning. But now, when there is also the hybrid environment of going to the office, right? You may not see somebody in a desk and you may assume that they're not working. They just may be working, at the park. I'm saying that, right? Or they may be working from home, or they may be working that night. And so it's that transitioning that I can see people struggling with. And so where I am bringing in what I saw from the pandemic is no, people just, especially creatives, they like to work in different environments, and we should be allowing them to do that. To be fair, that's not how higher ed thinks. Higher ed doesn't necessarily think as much in hybrid. Maybe other schools do. Ours is not there yet. Um, our university doesn't necessarily think about, well, it should be a set schedule. And I like the set schedule, but the set schedule also could, affect other people because they're like, no, I prefer to work at a certain time. And so what I'm trying to do from my management experience is how can we give freedom and flexibility, but also make sure that we are getting the best work forward for the university and for the employee. And that's a hard space. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I mean, obviously Disney is going through that, Amazon's going through that. So all companies are trying to figure out a way of bringing people back into the office for culture creation or culture focusing, but also giving people the freedom to make sure that they can work from home so they can have some sort of flexibility and creative juices happening there. So I'm bringing that. I'm also kind of working through the system to make sure that that can work for the employee, but also for what's best for the business. And then the last thing is uh, making sure that as the teams work together, they have that freedom to reach out to whoever needs to reach out. I don't believe in, um, I shouldn't be the bottleneck, right? I mean, I think you said it well. The organization is getting larger, and I shouldn't be the bottleneck. If I'm the bottleneck because I have to be the ultimate decision maker, or my boss has to be the ultimate decision maker, like maybe the process is not there yet. It's not that I shouldn't make decisions. I should, and I should make plenty of them. But if I'm beginning to be the bottleneck, then that's not working, right? And so again, that happens with trusting your employees. Make sure that they can feel comfortable reaching above you or to
Mhm.
your colleagues, and that they let you know we made this decision, and this is kind of how it works. But you need to have that relationship, and you need to have those one-on-ones on a constant basis. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, no, it's great. It gives me a little insight into kind of how you view, leadership and in management. So that's great. And I mean, the school you work for is fantastic and are doing all the things that you're working on, right? Correctly. So I think, it sets a good example in my personal opinion
Thank
for
you.
what to be looking for. That's great. I'm curious, Zach, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about, your history and all your different knowledge and insight shares?
Absolutely. So, well, LinkedIn is for sure. So Isaac Munoz, Texas A&M University. So you can for sure connect with me there, or you can just email me. And I am about to give my email, so just but be patient. I get a lot of emails. So Isaac Isaac dot Munoz Munoz at tamu dot edu. So anyway, yeah, so that's my email. For sure, connect with me via LinkedIn. Be patient because I do get a lot of emails, and I get invites. So, but I'm more than happy to chat with any of your listeners. Glad to do that.
Well, thank you so much. And to all our listeners tuning in today, thanks again for listening. We'll have another great episode up next, so make sure to tune into the next one. And a quick message from our sponsor is that if your school needs an updated interactive map, virtual tour, or centralized events calendar, make sure to reach out to concept3d.com. Thank you again. Thanks, Isaac, for joining us.
Thanks, Shiro.